Today, for our Monday Talks, we're going to be talking to Katharina Von Schnurbein. She's the European Commission Coordinator on Combating Antisemitism. Because of the rise of anti-Semitism across the continent, we will be speaking to her about her views on it, what are the policies the European Union is enacting, and how can civil society and non-Jewish communities get involved in the effort. So, Ms. Von Schnurbein, let's start with the 2012 survey on discrimination and hate crime against Jews. It was conducted by the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights, and it was instrumental in your own appointment, and it strengthened the conviction in the EU to respond to the increase in anti-Semitism. In that survey, and now I quote, about 90% of the respondents in Belgium and France reported that the Israeli-Arab conflict has a notable impact on their feelings of safety as Jews. How do you navigate this tension towards the conflict and the backlash that Jewish communities in Europe may feel as a result of it?
Yes, we've been very clear that violence against Jews, because there's a conflict somewhere else in the world, is completely unacceptable. I think that we need to establish that in more general terms, that no conflict anywhere in the world justifies violence here. And we have been clear also that it is important that Jews can feel safe here, that they can make life choices just like anybody else with regards to where they want to live, to which schools they want to send their children. I think it's unacceptable that they have to, in some cities when they wear a kippah, think about whether they can go out in this metro station or better take the next one. You know, so we see this with great worry, and the leadership of the European Commission, first Vice President Timmermans and also Commissioner Jourova, have been very clear that such violence is unacceptable, and that it is unacceptable to justify it with whatever political opinion one might have with regards to the conflict in the Middle East. And we have also been very clear, for example, and condemned the way the demonstrations in December 2017 were carried out on the streets of Europe, where clearly a line towards anti-Semitism was overstepped again and again.
In 2016, the European Commission did take action. They agreed on a code of conduct for countering illegal hate speech online. This code requires online platforms to assess, and if it's necessary, to remove material that in any way violates EU and national legislation regarding hate speech. So what is your assessment of the response of platforms like Facebook and Twitter? Do you think that they have responded adequately?
So we have indeed, because there has been this increase of hate speech and illegal hate speech on the internet, we approached the big IT companies in 2015 and concluded this code of conduct. We think that there has been progress in the way they acknowledge the problem, also in the way they see that, you know, they have a responsibility to keep their platforms clean, in the sense that it should not become a platform of hatred. Mm-hmm. It's also bad for their reputation. We see that there has been progress in the time in which things are being taken down, also in the way they are transparent as to when things are being taken down. I think there needs to be more transparency when things are not being taken down. And there has been, I think, also a general increase of capacity with regards to the understanding of what is illegal hate speech, because that is the basis for removing hate speech on the internet. And that capacity needs to increase. We have, on our side, started to work with about 30 NGOs that specialize in that field, to actually flag to the internet companies illegal hate speech. And there we see a significant increase of takedowns when it comes from those organizations. Where we need more improvement is really when flags come from individuals. I think they still don't get responses in time, which the time is for 24 hours. and things are not being taken down sufficiently. So there is progress, but a lot more needs to be done, because in the end, the internet has become a new reality, and what is illegal in the real world is also illegal on the internet. And I think there is, next to the responsibilities of the platforms, also the responsibilities of the state to bring the perpetrators to court, just as if they had incited in real terms.
The Institute of Jewish Policy Research in the UK has identified an increase in emigration of Jews, especially from France, heading to Israel and other places. So this has happened alongside the increase in anti-Semitism. How would you respond to the juxtaposition of these two things, which could be very concerning?
Indeed, the fact that Jews are leaving Europe, that they are concerned about their future here, is, I think, a very bad signal for Europe. We have time and again said that, you know, Jews need to have a future, because without Jews, Europe is no longer Europe. We don't have data with regards to exactly why people leave France, for example. At the moment, there was a peak in 2015, which was most certainly linked to the attacks on Charlie Hebdo and Hyper Cacher. And that has now gone down again. However, all over Europe, with the exception of the UK, Jews are actually, the Jewish community is declining. So it is clear that this is, for Europe, this is should be a big concern. And I think that there is a lack of acknowledgement to the extent to which this is indeed a challenge. Because we spend a lot of time actually explaining why anti-Semitism is not only a threat to the Jews, but it's a threat to society at large. We've seen in the past, in history in Europe, when Jews don't feel safe in Europe anymore, it's bad for Europe. And so that is something that we need to explain, that we explain also with regards to the member states, with different institutions, with regards to the general public, because we see when the acknowledgement is there, then also the action will follow with regards to the different aspects in the education sector, in the security sector, with regards to data collection by law enforcement agencies. We need the whole range of policies, and that will happen only if the acknowledgement is there. And in that respect, I think we have moved things forward on European level. We have endorsed a definition on anti-Semitism that is clear with regards to the red lines, for example, between criticizing Israel and anti-Semitism, which is, I think, very important in the debate, in the public debate in Europe today. And it lists all the different forms, the historic forms, the racial anti-Semitism, the right-wing Holocaust denial, the left-wing anti-Zionism, the conspiracy theories that you can find in any party of society. Also, anti-Semitism coming from within religious communities, from within the Muslim community. So these things are addressed in that definition, and it's very important that we use that in public discourse. Then the European Parliament adopted a resolution in 2016 whereby they also adopted that definition and then recommended the member states to adopt and apply the definition, because in fact it is only useful if it's actually applied. For example, in training of the police or law enforcement agencies, also for the education sector. And now we are in the process under the Austrian presidency to prepare a declaration on anti-Semitism by all the 28 member states, which would be a very good step forward and a clear declaration that, you know, anti-Semitism in Europe is unacceptable, and we will do everything we can to counter it.
I mean, like you said, in a way, it's very difficult to have a complete understanding of the reasons anti-Semitism has increased. On the one hand, it may be that those who have anti-Jewish sentiments, now they feel emboldened to speak out because of the rise of the far-right parties and movements, or that there are new converts who didn't harbor these feelings before, but they do now. And in this regard, you have previously stated that the floodgates have been opened. Can you explain what you meant by that? And generally, what should member states and EU-level policies, how should they address this?
Well, I think that when speaking to the Jewish community, and actually this has been one of the main parts of my mandate, to really reach out to the Jewish community, to listen to their concerns and to bring this back into the European Commission and to report also to the political leadership of the Commission. And what we have seen is that they clearly perceive this threat, that there is not a natural compass anymore to what can be said, what is, and I think this is, by the way, not only true with regards to the Jewish community or anti-Semitism. It's more generally, how do you behave on social media? You know, the things that people write, would they actually say it into the face of somebody or not? And so this is what I meant with the floodgates have opened, that there don't seem to be the natural boundaries that we used to have anymore, and that's very, very difficult. We see, I mean, you know, there's one thing to see illegal hate speech, which is clearly, criminalized by law. And then there is speech that is not helpful in the public discourse because it's offensive to somebody else. It's not necessarily illegal. That's like with this definition on anti-Semitism. Not all anti-Semitic expression is illegal, but is not helpful if we want to have a community in which we can all live together in our diversity, but with respect to the other, and the acknowledgement that with rights that we have acquired, thankfully, for the individual, come responsibilities also towards the society. I think that's very important also with regards to the fight against anti-Semitism, that both sides are important. Rights and responsibility.
Yes. And you also mentioned a Holocaust denialism and revisionism, which is on a rise and is a very, very serious concern. So how much of the rise in anti-Semitism can be attributed to this, and what role does education about Europe's past play in our response?
Well, I think it's difficult to say how much anti-Semitism comes from Holocaust denial. Very clearly, when there's Holocaust denial, the root is anti-Semitism. That's very clear. We also see that there is maybe, the blatant denial is not so visible, but what is quite visible is trivialization of the Holocaust. The idea that the Jews are exaggerating the numbers is clearly anti-Semitic, that Israel is using, or the Jews are using, the Holocaust in their favor. All these ideas, I think that these are the underlying motives that create then also, or come from anti-Semitism. I think it's important to have and to improve the knowledge about Jewish life throughout the centuries in Europe, in order then to understand what an incredible tragedy the Holocaust was, because we often talk about figures about the 6 million, which of course is ungraspable in itself. But when it comes down to understanding for example, individual fates of people, or understanding what culture was wiped out by the Holocaust and has only to some extent been restored, to a very small extent actually. And it is a miracle that we have lively Jewish communities in Europe today, and that's also why we have to defend them so strongly. But I think Holocaust education can do only so much when it comes to the prevention of anti-Semitism. And I think you see that often in a discourse where clearly people, support, for example, Holocaust remembrance, but they will still be very critical towards Jews and blame them for supporting Israel or today. So I think we have to have both. We have to have Holocaust education, and by the way, also research, also training for teachers, because they are exposed to this on a daily basis. And the idea, when you teach about the Holocaust and then someone puts up his hand and says, but in Gaza, Israel is doing the same. Well, as a teacher, you need to have arguments. You need to know the history of Israel, and you need to know also what led to the foundation of Israel, in order to be able to have a meaningful debate with someone who comes with such an idea. And so all of that together can help to dismantle prejudices. And I think the three building blocks, let's say Jewish life, Holocaust remembrance and education, and clear education and explanation of what anti-Semitism means today, need to go together.
In your previous role, you were the coordinator for the dialogue between the European Commission and churches, religious associations or communities, as well as philosophical and non-confessional organizations.
Long title.
Very long title. So you have a lot of experience working with community organizations and institutions, and now in your current position as someone combating anti-Semitism, as a coordinator for that, how is the response being coordinated with other religious communities, and why should non-Jews get involved?
Well, I think non-Jews should get involved because when anti-Semitism is on the rise, it's bad for all of us. And I think it's in everybody's self-interest, actually, to clearly speak up against any form of anti-Semitism. But that means, first, you need to understand what it is. And I think it's important that society at large becomes more aware of that. With regards to exchange and meetings between religious groups and organizations, I think it's very important and it's symbolic. It certainly is very beneficial for all those who are involved. And for example, when there are meetings between Jewish and Muslim representatives, it's always a picture that is important, an important message to society at large. But it can also only do so and so much. I think it's important that we understand, and we also build coalitions and speak up for each other. And there are in some countries this is done already, I think, in a good way. For example, in the UK, there's good collaboration between the Jewish community and certain Muslim communities, and really standing up for each other, standing up when one community is being attacked. But on the other hand, I don't think we can put the burden of general challenges in society, of bridging between the different cultures, of creating a diversity that is meaningful and still is one community in a way. We cannot put that on certain groups only. So, you have to, I think, make sure that there is also a meaningful dialogue between the communities and mainstream society, and that the doors are open to enter into mainstream society, and that any kinds of hurdles with regards to education, housing, are being addressed and improved for the various communities.
So we just finished the interview with Katharina Von Schnurbein. She spoke very candidly about the challenges Europe is facing, the very concrete steps she has taken in her work in order to address this serious issue, and why all of us, non-Jews and Jews alike, should be very concerned about addressing this issue. And if you enjoyed this Monday Talks, please follow, retweet, and watch more of our content. Thank you.